Hi, and welcome to Stories of Climate Change Hope, the podcast that brings you a little bit of hope every other week. My name is Steffen Schwartmann, and today we listen to the climate story of Eleanor Snare. They are an artist, writer, and educator, and they work as a senior lecturer at Leeds Arts University in fashion branding and communication. They also worked as a creativity consultant for 7 years, and they like to connect topics such as the environment, climate change, and the arts. So, hi Eleanor, how are you doing?
Hi, Stefan. Yes, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Let us maybe first set the scene. So, I'm inviting you to my house, or we can also say my room. So I'm opening the door, I'm letting you in, and we see the huge carpet on the floor. It's winter, so it might be cold, but the carpet is really warm. And in the middle, there's maybe not a bouquet of flowers because there aren't too many flowers now blooming, but there is like a bouquet of different kind of twigs that I cut outside in the middle, and
Yeah.
there's also a big candle on the floor. So if you want, we can just sit down next to this bouquet of twigs and the candle. Would you like to sit down?
Yes. Yes, I would love that.
Cool. And now we're sitting here and the candle is shining, and yeah, so welcome again. Basically, like my first question, I hope this is not basically, how did you become interested in arts? I know you studied, I think, arts history and also design. What made
Hmm.
you interested in this particular subject?
Wow, that's a big question. Um, well, because it's kind of like the question, why are you the way you are? You know, um, but ever since I was very, very small, a very young child, I've cared about and been involved with and I think deeply emotionally committed to art in lots of different forms. I grew up in a household where my mum was very, very creative and artistic. And so a lot of our free time was spent creating art. So that might be painting or drawing, but I also learned how to knit and crochet and do dressmaking and build things. And I grew up in the countryside as well. So a lot of my time was also spent making art of a kind out of doors, using imaginative play and creating different worlds and potions and adventures in the environment as well. And art has always been something which helps me and has helped me understand myself more deeply and to process the emotional experiences that I'm going through. I don't think I would have said that when I was younger, but reflecting on it and looking back, I see it as an important tool in my emotional development and also my healing from the traumas and the pain and the challenges that I've experienced and survived throughout my life. So art's almost like it's been a constant companion. And my mum has a great story about when I was very small. So I love to write. I'm an avid reader and an avid writer. And when I was very, very small, I didn't speak, when I was sort of 1 or 2, I didn't speak for a very long time to the point where my mum and dad were a little bit worried that I just wasn't going to speak. And one day I just opened my mouth and sort of a full sentence came out. But my mum always says that she thinks the only reason I learned how to speak was because I thought it was what you had to do to be able to read a book. Because I'd only ever seen someone read a book to me, out loud. I'd never seen someone just read silently to themselves. And so everything in my life, really, from even when I was just after I was born, has been characterized by wanting to be involved in this creative process of telling stories, sharing stories, understanding my own stories. So it's something that's been embedded in my life forever. 100% forever. There's never been a time in my life where it hasn't been important. Hasn't always been I haven't always acted upon that importance. We get distracted and we get convinced that our path is not the right path for us. But throughout my life, it's always been there. Always been there.
Wow, yeah, that is very impressive. And I'm really curious, like the first sentence, was it somehow connected to arts or was it something very different? Like the first sentence you spoke.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to check in with my mum, but I don't know what the specifics of it were.
Yeah.
But I'll have to check in. But I imagine it was I imagine it was describing something or pointing at something, but I've never I've always been just so surprised that I didn't, I love talking now. I love conversation. It always surprised me that I didn't, I didn't speak for so long. And then when I did, it was because I thought, oh, I better do that. Otherwise I won't be able to read that really great book. And so I will ask my mum what the sentence was, if she remembers it. It was a while ago now.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious about some of these little things sometimes. And it was like one detail, like, oh my God, what was the sentence? Like, it must have been something really important that you suddenly decided you want to speak, and your surrounding discovered you can speak. Yeah, and I imagine it must be so fulfilling growing up in such a creative atmosphere and being creative. Just in general,
to some extent.
Yeah, like for me, like when I was very young, I really liked to draw, and I think my imagination was quite wild. I could just imagine some beings, and I was really into fantasy, trying to draw like really cool dragons or knights fighting dragons. And then there came like a time, then suddenly, it may have been in school that someone said something, or I saw, oh my God, like the other kids' drawings, they look so realistic, so different to mine. And then maybe something that other people said or did that I felt like, okay, I'm not good at drawing, so I will just stop here. And there really was a time where I basically everything, like every time I drew something, it was like, I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't look so nice. So for me, like, it just came a while ago that I discovered, like, I don't have to be like what others regard as a like good drawer or good drawing to express myself, but I kind of got back to it, like drawing comics, drawing cartoons, or just small characters. It is so nice to see you don't need so much detail to convey like a story or a message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I think in some ways it was, when I think about the range of creative, or let's say the range of acts of creation that I am conscious of how to do, I'm I think it's amazing. Like, I have this encyclopedic knowledge almost of all these different techniques, and more importantly than that, I always felt very free to work it out. So if I didn't know how to do something in our household, it was very much, well, you need to work it out then. If you don't know what a word is, you better look it up in the dictionary, that sort of thing. So it was very much like encouraging an autonomy of learning. In some ways, the creativity in my household from my mum was really important to me, because I think my mum really struggled when we were quite young, with postnatal depression, but also just that generation of parents perhaps struggling a bit with being emotionally available. And I think a lot of the creative activities that we did with our mum were about sharing a moment with her, whether or not the rest of the time actually it was not always the nicest or the most sort of pleasant house to be in. I'm not saying it was bad, but it was uncomfortable for someone like me and my sister, who were both particularly, I think, emotionally aware. And the creativity was very much a bonding exercise, I believe. But also, on the other hand, when I was very young, my dad did not, he was very, he didn't understand art. He said that a couple of times. He didn't get it. He didn't see why it was important. So there's a real kind of clash in the household of this, seeing the power of creativity and loving it, but for my mum not having the opportunity to fulfill it because of the generation that she was in. And for my dad not seeing the benefit and not understanding why I wanted to spend my time on it, and not understanding why I wanted to, do it at A level or go to college and do it. So while I didn't have the feeling, as you described, which is so common for people to go to school and to start comparing our creative output with other people, I didn't have that. But what I had was not really knowing whether it was okay to be creative, because I had such different opinions almost from my parents. And I do think that's one of the challenges, of which there are many, around people fully embracing their creativity and that inner artist, is that maybe their parents don't agree. As you say, you go to school and you think, oh, my work's not as good as the other kids. It doesn't look real, as if that's important. We think we can't do it. We think we put a moral judgment on it. We say it's good or bad art. And personally, I don't think there is such a thing as good or bad art. There's skilled and unskilled. There's naive and kind of intellectualized. There's all these other qualifiers, but good and bad is not really a thing we need to apply to the act of creation. But all of these sorts of things get in the way of people recognizing, as you have now, that what's more important is that you're expressing yourself, and that you are using an art form which resonates with you to talk about your life and how you feel and what you want to do and what you care about and what the pain that you're in sometimes as well. So we kind of forget all that stuff, and there's a lot of barriers that get put into play, often accidentally, by well-meaning people between us and our creativity, and particularly our artistic urges and our artistic drives. We get that kind of accidentally gets squashed out of us a bit.
Yeah. And I just wanna comment, because I just remembered that I kind of have a similar story. Well, it's a little bit similar, because, like, okay, I was not so into drawing when I realized I'm not that good, but I always loved music and singing and playing the guitar, and I also played in a band. And then there was a time when I thought about and actually decided, for a couple of years I wanted to become an opera singer. And it was also very similar, I would say, like the perspectives from my parents. My father, who was more like against it, but I think he just wanted to protect me somehow because he thought there's no real money in it, to make a living. And my mom, she was very open and thinks, yeah, just do what you like to do and you will figure it out. So at the time, it was very difficult, sort of like knowing what I really like to do, but like going against someone who's really important to me and whose opinion I also value. And then like in the end, it didn't work out. Like I tried to do it, but there's like a entrance exam that I didn't pass a couple of times, and then I didn't want to continue having these two kind of rails, being on two rails at the same time. Like, okay, I want to become an opera singer, but what do I do until I get there? Like, do I do an apprenticeship or study something else that I found really challenging? But yeah, like it is still like singing is still a part of me, and I always like I can always express myself with my voice, like singing or talking to people, having great conversations, or this podcast, which also really is really nice, a nice way
Mm.
to express.
It is. It is very hard. Whatever you decide to do, or not really. I don't think decide is the right word. Whatever you are here to do, whatever you feel is your mission, your passion, or or even simply the person that you are, it's very, very hard when it seems to go against what someone who you love really cares about. And as you said, a lot of the time, the person you love or you really respect or whatever care about is trying to protect you, is trying to make sure that you look after yourself and you've got a roof over your head and all that sort of stuff. And that's kind of their job. That's their job to worry about that stuff. But it is very difficult to go against that. And actually, a part of, I believe, becoming an artist or becoming the kind of having the strength of character to follow whatever it is that you truly believe you are here to do, to be of service. Part of that strength of character has to come from cutting the tie. And that doesn't mean not having a relationship, for example, with a family or a partner or a friend,
You mean like
but
become
actually,
independent, or?
yes, but in a way that is acknowledging that it's okay that they don't like it. And that's, I think, very difficult for a lot of people. Like, we want to be liked, we want to be loved, we want to make sure that, you know, we're on everyone's good side. And there's a real, I think, strength, as I said, strength of character on the journey when you realize that you can still be loved and cared for and be loving and caring and not agree and not have the kind of requirement that they, I don't know, that they approve of everything you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because actually, some of the best artists and writers and creative people in the world, they had no, they did not have approval. If we're worrying about approval, we'll never do all the really revolutionary things that we need to do.
So you think it gives a kind of strength that you have this opposition that you would you say
Yeah,
you
well,
feel
I
like
would.
that you have
Yeah, you.
to, well, kind of like, okay, you can get more independent, but would you say you still maybe inside feel like you need to do something amazing or convince someone who's not convinced about it because you are convinced already?
Yes, you need, and I think it's. Oh, one day they'll understand. If I do this, they'll get it. If I make loads of money, they'll get it. If I'm successful, if I write a book, they'll get it. It's like,
Hmm.
who cares whether they get it? Because they're never, you could do everything. You could do everything in the world. You could win a bloody Nobel Prize, and they could still say,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's not a proper job, is it? Because it's nothing to do with, you know what I mean? It's nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with what you're
Yeah.
doing, and it's everything to do with them. So you've got to, I think when you're younger, I really believe everybody needs something to rebel against. Everybody needs to have a rebellious phase, and they need to choose, whether consciously or not, we choose what we're going to rebel against. Lots of people rebel against their parents, but I think increasingly we're seeing an entire generation of young people rebel against the way that society has been constructed. And you need something to rebel against, but then the maturing part, the bit where you mature and grow stronger, is that you realize it doesn't matter, that you need that rebellion to like launch you into whatever it is you want to do. And then when you're in it, the key thing I believe that keeps people going is recognizing that it's for them, it's for themselves, and to not worry too much, like I said, about that approval or trying to convince someone, because the only person who needs to get it is you, the only person. But that, I think that moment where you realize that is a kind of a lifetime defining moment. And I don't think it really matters when it happens, but I think it happens for everyone who is truly committed to being an artist or creative person of some form.
Yeah. You cannot see it, but I'm like nodding all the way. Yeah.
I just imagine. I thought we were sitting by this bouquet of twigs. Like you're nodding so much, the twigs are just like wobbling all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. Yeah, like the moment you realize that, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I like, I think you probably automatically then also start, if you have someone who's like kind of against it or has a different opinion, I think you would automatically start to find people who support you, who think, yeah, like this is so cool, like I want to do something similar, like people with the same interest or people who support you, because yeah, we need to be independent, but also I just wanted to mention this so it's clear, like it would be so difficult if everyone is against you and you don't find support like by your peers or by anyone at school or at uni.
Yeah, and it becomes the moments where you have that real support, and for me it's actually somebody seeing you and your true kind of self and your true nature. That becomes a memory that you sort of don't let go of easily. I remember when I was at school and I was choosing what I wanted to do after my A-levels, and I really wanted to go and do a foundation diploma. So in the UK it's like a year where you do loads of different art, and it's kind of it's like a preparatory year for going to art college or design school or whatever. And I really wanted to do it, and my school was very, very academic, so they didn't really want me to do it. They wanted me to go off and go to like a fancy uni, and I was desperate, and my dad was a bit against it. And I went to my careers teacher, and they were like, oh, I don't know anything about it. Really helpful, I'm sure. So they said, oh, go and speak to your art teacher. And I went to my art teacher and I said, oh, I really, really want to do art foundation, but it's just no one seems to get how much I want to do it. And he turned around to me and he said, well, are you sure? And I just, at that moment, I was so enraged, and I just sort of burst into tears, and I was like shouting, saying, of course I want to do it. It's everything to me. It's, really passionately explaining why I wanted to do it. And when I finished, he went, I just wanted to check. It's like he knew that I was going to have this really extreme reaction. But for me, what that taught me was that like he already knew how important it was for me, but it was almost, he wanted me to know about how important it was. I needed to hear it from myself. And so although that seems on the surface of it like, oh, he didn't support me, actually I feel that he did support me because he knew it was about me deciding and me really caring about that for myself. So I think those moments become kind of imprinted on your mind because they are the moments when you realize that that's how important it is. You are prepared to kind of shout at a teacher, you're prepared to burst into tears, you're prepared to, sell all your possessions and move halfway around the world, whatever it is, you're prepared to do it. And you're absolutely right. You do need those people in your life who support the decision or encourage you to see that you support it so much that you're going to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, yes, it makes sense. I was just thinking whether I had this moment, whether I had a kind of similar outburst, maybe in at least from the inside. Definitely, I think I was very
Yeah.
sure what I wanted to do, but I also had this. I think I always had this sense of security. So other factors also played into my decision. Okay, I won't become a professional singer, because I was also concerned, like, is it, yeah, like, it's very funny because now I realize actually that, okay, like, I'm a student now. I'm still a student since 2013. So I'm a graduate student now. And I have lived for, for 7 years now with few things. Like, I don't have a high income or anything. So with this experience now, I could imagine, okay, even if I would be a singer, then I might not have such a high income. But now I realized, okay, it's not, I don't have to own a big house and several cars. But at that time, it was still really relevant for me. So it is, yeah, it's kind of funny, but of course we develop and our ideas sort of change or become something
You don't
different. Yeah. Yeah, so I totally get it.
you don't know how you don't yeah, you don't know how you want to live or how you can live until you've lived it. And we only get one pattern. We only get one pattern of doing things, and that's from our family. And I think that's why, like, I'm super passionate about kind of why I love learning and why I love educational institutions and encouraging children to socialize and have lots of family friends who look after the kids, because it's about teaching children or teaching young people that there are alternatives, there are other ways to be in the world. And I think it's such a powerful person to be in a child's life or a young person's life, a teacher or an auntie or an uncle or a family friend who's the kind of crazy one. Like, when I was growing up, we had some family friends and their daughter lived on a canal boat and was this hippie who I never really knew what she did, but she always seemed to be having adventures. And I was just completely besotted with her because it was so different to anything that I had experienced in my life. And we need those people. And I think what's exciting is when you become an adult, you can be those people for others. So, you choosing to study and to go on this learning adventure and doing the podcast and living in this way that maybe is quite different to what you expected when you were younger or what your parents expected. There's going to be people younger than you looking at that, listening to this and going, oh, right, okay, yeah, maybe I could do that. And that's really fantastic feeling of providing a pattern for someone that might actually make them a lot happier than a pattern that they never kind of really fitted into in the first place.
Yeah, I think so. That what you mentioned, being an adult, and now you can well, what other people would call crazy, you can be that person who steps out of the norms and, like,
Yes.
people walking in the in the city center, and then imagine you are someone who's just jumping, like is walking, and then suddenly is making a jump, and that's like something so simple, right? But like just this, okay, like we are always walking one step in front of the other, and like if you just stand still, even just standing still and
Yeah,
just don't move, that
looking at stuff.
even something so simple, it's like, what's going on? Or you start like, yeah, like you start jumping, or you sit on the floor, and it's
Yeah,
just
I think
so many tiny things that is suddenly becoming special. And then children are looking at you and, mom, what's going on? What is he doing? And like something
yeah,
exciting is going on suddenly.
and there's more. I think the more increasingly we've got lots of opportunities to distract ourselves. We don't have to ever be not doing anything, if you see what I mean. So my students, when we have a break during lectures, the first thing they do is get out their phone, and I'm like, I just sit there, I just sit there looking into space or whatever. Or you go to dinner and you just eat alone, or you did before lockdown. You go to dinner and eat alone, or have a coffee, and you don't look at your phone, you don't read a book. Or you just, the other day I was walking through the woods, and I just I'm laughing right now because I've got the giggles thinking about you jumping around. Um, but I walked through a wood to get to work to teach, and I was just sort of bumbling along quite slowly, and I saw out the corner of my eye a deer, and that's quite rare to see, kind of a deer, and it wasn't spooked or anything, and I just stood there looking at it, sort of gawking slightly for ages. But I thought, if I'd have been rushing or racing or checking my phone or in a hurry or just doing my everyday normal thing, I would have never have seen this moment. And there's something really special about not only, yes, taking the time, but actually allowing yourself to be different, allowing yourself to be kind of surprised. And what was, yes, I'm walking along. What happens if I start skipping? What would that be like? And really, I think enjoying, like a child would do, like a child would say, well, I'm just doing it because I want to, or I just want to make these noises because I can, or I want to, fall on the floor and pretend to be dead because it's funny, or whatever. And I think there's a lot of stuff we can learn from kids about just letting ourselves be a bit more expressive. And that is for me, that is the artist, is the person who just goes, yeah, I'm going to sit down on the floor in the middle of the street and let's see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, like you can say, you can learn this behavior from children, or you can also try to conserve this kind of inner child, conserve it inside of you,
Yeah.
so that, yeah, like you grow up and you get older, but some parts of you still have this kind of, yeah, like insane energy, being childish. Like, it's not being childish, but like, okay, it's not
Yeah.
sort of, no one would say this is like what grown-ups do, but just like having this idea, just do something differently, not what everyone else is doing. Or, yeah, and yeah, coming back, like,
Mm.
um okay, this sounds a little bit weird, like, it's the world is so diverse. I mean, this was a kind of weak statement. I didn't mean like what everyone else is doing, because, like, yeah, like everyone has their own goals and ideas. I mean, just what we see, do something differently from what we see, like with the walking, and do something differently. But of course, everyone is doing something special, and we might not see it, but maybe everyone has this kind of child still being alive, but just being kept, um like kept down and silenced, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so interesting what you said about it's not necessarily being childish. Again, that it has a negative connotation, and you might want to say childlike, but I actually wonder if an interesting way to phrase it is keeping a part of yourself from being a grown-up. So the rest of you can be a grown-up, the rest of you can be an adult, but there's a part of yourself it's like Peter Pan, just never growing up. And I think that's quite important, is allowing part of yourself to remain young, very young, because you can tell there are people that you meet and it's like they were born 50. Do you know what I mean? Like they just bypassed childhood
Mm-hmm.
and just landed in normally slightly grumpy.
Mm-hmm.
Bit life's a bit difficult.
Yeah. And then you meet them and you're like, how? Oh, by the way, I'm like 28. How old are you? Yeah, I'm like 25, and I'm like just thinking to myself, oh my god, I thought you're like 40. That some people might just seem much older somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, and not from how they look, just from sense of that. But then you meet people that have this energy and this enthusiasm for life and this appetite for seeing the joy and the play and the humor, including in themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that is so powerful. And I know that for a long time, I pretended that I wasn't that person. I used to take myself very seriously, and I used to dress in a way that was a lot older than the person I was. And, I used to just not be the silly Billy that I actually am. Because I am, and my inner child is very present to me. And actually it's brought a huge amount of joy, but also it's the part of me that takes risks and feels confident and just doesn't care what anybody thinks. We'll just do stuff as we talked about because it's wonderful. And so being present to that part of yourself, I think gives you a freedom that I truly believe it gives you a freedom that no one can take away.
Yeah, coming back to like I started, I probably wouldn't have started the podcast without our most important current issue right now, our climate crisis. And so I'm also really interested in, now that we heard so many personal details about you and your relationship to the arts. I'm wondering, I think you mentioned it briefly, that you also found arts in nature. So I was wondering, like, how was it something you were really aware of, like, or was it something unconscious that you kind of connected, like, your interest for arts, but also, I don't know, like being outside, being interested in nature? Was that something you did consciously, or like thinking back in time? What do you think? How do you make the connection?
As I said, I grew up in the countryside, so in a very small village, and it was just a very normal part of my life, our lives as children, to be outside a lot of the time. Normally doing something very dangerous. Very dangerous and probably, life-threatening in some way. But it was just such a normal part of my experience that I assumed that would be, I think, that how it would always be throughout my life. But as I said as well, you get distracted and you forget things that are important to you. And I think when I started to go to university, I was in a city, in a very industrial part of the UK. And then when I went to my next university to do my postgraduate, again, it was a bit more green and but I was still living a very much like a city life, and I think there's an aspect of being in your early 20s where that's what you're interested in. You're interested in kind of the urban hustle and bustle and the just the excitement, especially when you come from somewhere very small. But when I was a little bit older, how old would I have been? My sort of maybe 28 or 29, I got an allotment. So I don't know if you have those in Germany.
I forgot what it means.
It's like it's a piece of land that sometimes is owned by a local council, but it can also be the land can be gifted to like a group of people, and you rent a piece of land.
Oh yeah. We
that
have
you
that.
normally have like a vegetable garden on or something like that. So I got an allotment, and I think that was when I really consciously realised that nature had this, or not necessarily even nature, but the external world, the non-human world, had a huge role to play in my life alongside the arts. And I think I connected it because over time, this is over years that I started to connect it, and it's maybe only in the last 2 years that I've really understand the full connection and the full complexity of it. But the sensation that I have when I'm making art is the same sensation that I have when I'm doing things in the non-human natural world, when I'm gardening or when I'm walking, when I'm engaging with the outside world, or like near a tree, or looking at plants, or climbing a hill, or anything like that. I have the same sensation. So it is a very subconscious, in a way. There's a subconscious feeling there that I don't know how to name it yet. But it's always, nature has always, or the environment, our world outside our houses, has always been this sort of glorious, heavenly experience for me. I remember even as a very young child, or a younger child, being very emotionally moved by the way the sun looked over the hedge, or seeing, a wasp's nest, or the plum tree next door, feeling emotionally moved by those experiences. And that's just only strengthened as I've got older. I remember when we were living in South America, we were on a bus going through the hills in Colombia, and I just burst into tears because I was just so moved by the landscape. And I can't at the moment describe, I'm sure there are words for it, I'm sure there's information about it, but I don't know that necessarily I could describe what that was, except a deep kind of reverence and emotional belonging with our natural world. And the connection to art is that it's that same feeling. It is that they are the same to me. They are the same experience, and making art about the natural world, or creating art within the natural world, or creating and making an art of interacting with the natural world. For example, the art of developing my vegetable plot. It is the same.
Yeah.
And I wish I had better language to explain it.
Then I can imagine that it kind of comes naturally. I mean, for you, this connection was there. At some point, you realized that you find art in nature, and this, I guess, it was a very natural connection. So then it probably came like you have this. Well, how did we meet? So we met at the Pebble Future Fest. It was like a online festival, and like concerned with sustainability, and they invited different speakers and had different workshops, introduced some podcasts, and there you also had a workshop which well, I would say could help people to find a connection in nature and themselves.
Mm.
What would you say? Like, what's your aim of the workshop?
I always hope to do that. I hope to help people find that connection. And the purpose of that particular workshop was to articulate, or to get people to articulate for themselves, the ways in which we actually learn from nature. Because I think we talk in a more sort of generalized way within the sustainability conversations, or even conversations in a, on a very what we might call like a light green level. People know that nature, we need to understand nature more, and we need to be more like nature, in inverted commas. It's very vague, and we don't, like, how do we do that? So we have a tendency to assume, my students do it, I'm sure we've all done it. We have a tendency to assume we should know how to do something before we've ever been taught how to do something. And if no one's ever sat with you or walked with you and talked with you about nature and about your relationship to nature and learning from the world and learning from the environment, how are you meant to know how to do it? So it's, when people say live more slowly, live more in season, like, what is that? What does that mean? And as an educator, one of my gifts is understanding how people learn and understanding how to take people from point A, I don't know, to point B, I do know. So that workshop was very much about exploring that idea, because I do believe people have relationships with the non-human natural world that have taught them great lessons, but they need to uncover them, and they need to remind themselves of them. So my allotment is my example, because it was such a concentrated period of time where I learn huge amounts of things from my relationship to that natural environment, but without the process of actually being on an allotment holder and digging and planting and building a shed and getting rid of slugs or not getting rid of slugs or whatever. If I hadn't have had that, I wouldn't necessarily have known or have learned that there's information there. And so that workshop, one of the exercises was, well, the core exercise really was traveling in your imagination to a place with trees that's important to you, and listening, imaginatively listening to what you can hear from that place and that time. And I think, Stefan, I remember in yours you were climbing a tree.
Yes, I was. Yeah, it was very surprising. Like, before the workshop, I just thought, oh, it sounds nice. Let's see. And yeah, like my imagination was running wild. Like, when you mentioned that tree, there is like a very unique tree in my father's garden, a sequoia, a mammoth tree. And then I immediately remembered just like being a young boy and running around in the garden, and then growing up, and like just 1 or 2 years ago being in the garden. And my brother, he's like a tree climber, and he's a professional. He has all the equipments and so on. And he said like, hey, why don't we climb the mammoth tree? And so I'm afraid of heights. So I thought, I don't know. We can try. And it was like, yeah, like obviously I trust my brother. And the moment I, like, my legs were on the tree stem, so I was already in the air, but I was just like a few centimeters um, above the ground. But I felt secure, because I felt like, oh my God, what could happen? Like, why was I so afraid? The tools, like the equipment, is holding me, and then my legs are touching the tree stem. and it's so solid, like what could happen? And then we climbed at the top, and like surrounding is like a forest of deciduous trees, and the mammoth tree is a bit taller, so we had a really amazing view over the forest. And yeah, I think in the workshop I said something like that the tree was somehow like telling me, okay, you can trust me fully and you won't be hurt. Yeah, it was a little journey.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. What a wonderful way to get rid of your fear of heights as well.
Yeah. Well, maybe I just need to climb the tree a little bit more often.
Yeah.
I did not conquer my fear of heights, but maybe it helps when. Oh, that is so true. Maybe next time next time I'm in a situation where I'm afraid I might fall, then I mean, not really be in the danger, but just feel like I might fall. Just imagine being on the tree. Yeah.
Yeah. And this, I think that's such a wonderful example of experiences in the natural world, in our outdoors environment, which, yes, there's people there and there's equipment there, and it's not just you and the tree. You haven't just scaled the tree like barehanded, but it's that experience and that connection with something that is so stable and rooted and old and wise. That's what's giving, for me, that's what's kind of inspired that memory and that idea of being safe, and that you're not going to get hurt, and that you can trust. And every single one of us has a myriad memories like that, a myriad experiences and imaginings, but we just forget, and we don't. It's like our subconscious is an incredible teaching tool, but we don't visit it very often. And actually taking a moment, even just half an hour, to travel to a place in your imagination. A tree is a really good one because they're such kind of old beings. Traveling to that place in your memory, in your imagination, that a place that's really important to you, and just asking, what does this tell me? What can I learn? And it's every time I've done it in various different forms, people have come away with almost shock at what they've discovered. I do another exercise where it's an imaginary walk through nature, but you're walking with your future self. So the self of 5 years time, 10 years time, 20 years time, whatever feels right. And you are asking your future self to kind of point things out to you. Because a lot of the time we don't necessarily trust ourselves to know the answer, or we think we are, right now we think we are somehow flawed or imperfect or ignorant. So walking with our future self is quite exciting because they've been through it. They've been through all the stuff that you haven't been through yet. They've seen it all. They know it all. They know exactly what's going to happen. So you can kind of get this wisdom that's already within you just by asking that person from the future, kind of imagining that future self. But again, it's walking through nature and looking at what not just the beauty of nature, not just appreciating it like a picture postcard, but actually understanding, what does this mean to me? How does this resonate with my experience and my journey, my spiritual, my emotional journey of this moment? And I guarantee for people that there will be profound realizations. And I think that is, for me, a powerful tool in kind of hopeful action against climate crisis, against climate emergency. Because if you can see that this incredible natural world surrounding us, this incredible, beautiful kind of environment, has something to teach you, has something to teach you about yourself that you didn't know before. You want to preserve that process, you want to preserve that opportunity. And there's a kind of equalizing between you, the human, and the tree, the leaf, the mushroom, the squirrel, whatever it is that you're contemplating, when you realize that, hey, you're a student of this world. There's a fantastic book I read this year by George Trevelyan, who's considered to be one of the sort of founding fathers of the, I guess, European New Age movement in the 1970s. And he describes the planet as the school of Earth, that we are here to learn. And I think that the Earth itself is our best teacher. And we have to let it be the teacher. We have to be the student for once and listen and look, because we will find meaning and we will find powerful revelations if we take a moment to really consider that relationship that we have with the outdoor world. Or if you don't have one at the moment, or if you feel it's lacking, to cultivate that incredible relationship.
Yeah, that is it's a really nice thought, like our planet being, yeah, kind of school of Earth, and we're here to learn.
I love it. And I like to say that for me, it's an art school of Earth, because the art school is the place of rebellion and radical thought, creativity, change. So, what better? For me, it's the art school of Earth. But I think it's a fantastic. I think for me, when I sort of have been learning about this increasingly and discovering it and sharing it with my clients, or when I'm, for example, doing interviews like this, I'm increasingly realizing that we are children, we are students, and that's a really wonderful place to be, to know that you don't know, and to realize that there's an fantastic teacher waiting to teach you everything you ever needed to know about yourself and about connection and love and all those things. It's right there, and it's literally you walk out your door and it's there. That's fantastic for me.
Yeah, I think that is a really, really nice food for thought, and almost coming to the end of this episode. Yeah, and coming to the two of my favorite questions.
Okay.
One question is, what gives you hope in a time of climate crisis and different kind of really huge challenges that we face? What gives you hope and what makes you hopeful?
So there's a quotation that I really like, which is, to plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. And so anything I do out of doors, particularly with, growing vegetables or preparing things for winter and for next season, that gives me hope, because there is something about believing it will come, believing it will be there. So the active generation of our outdoor environment, our non-human natural world, encourages and makes me hopeful. I also am lucky enough to live on a row of houses where there's two little boys who live, Arthur and Leo, and every moment I spend any time with them, I'm kind of in awe of their continued energy and excitement, and their zest for life. and I try to get them involved in as much digging and planting as possible. But just, I think there's something about, I put them to work the other day, helping me dig a raised bed. But there is something about being around young people. Obviously, I teach kind of 18 to 20, so whether you are 8 or 18, I think there is something about being around younger people when they have this fierceness of they want to live life and they want to kind of suck it all in, and they want to create joy and be joyful. And that gives me a huge amount of hope, because when you see someone, particularly in my role as an educator, when you see someone learn something, when you see that light bulb go on, and they're like, oh, I get it now, whatever it is, when you see that, you kind of can't help but be hopeful, because if they can do it, you can do it. And if you can do it, 100 other people can do it, 7 billion people can do it. The light bulb can go on, and it's kind of up to us about which light bulb we choose and how we get there. But there's something really hopeful, or hope-inducing, let's say, about seeing someone come to a realization, a revelation. So I'm a pretty optimistic person, to be honest. So it's not hard for me to be hopeful.
Yeah, that is beautiful. It's really beautiful. And the last question, I don't wanna like comment it. I really like just beautiful. What are you looking forward doing in the next week or in the next few days?
Oh, in the next few days, I well, I just need to I'm thinking about what I'm doing. Well, here in the UK, we're finishing up our end of the university term, so it'll be the last time I see my students until next semester, January. And I'm really looking forward to. They've convinced me to do some Christmas activities, so I'm looking forward to whatever they're going to be, because I haven't decided yet. So they'll be fun. We'll work that out. And also, I'm really looking forward to winding down that final last notch to the kind of winter solstice on the 21st, and just allowing some really quiet time. I've been having a lot of quiet time recently, and I think this season, if you're not doing it already, oh my goodness, just hibernate. It's amazing. And I'm really looking forward to doing that more, and reading and continuing to educate myself so that I can emerge like a butterfly in the spring.
Yeah.
I didn't have it. So that really.
Yeah. Well, Eleanor, thank you so much for joining me today. It really was a pleasure, and I did not expect the conversation to touch on so many different levels. And thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, Stefan. I've really enjoyed it, and I think it's so fascinating. I always say I don't do small talk; I only do big talk. So I'm not surprised we went where we did, but I am really glad that we had a bit of a giggle as well, because I think that's so important. Is that joy and that joyfulness of life is something that I hope when people listen to this, they feel that.
I hope so too. Yes. So we end this episode, as always, by saying that we want to commit ourselves to the healing of our world and our society. We want to bridge gaps and decrease the separation inside society and between us and our environment. We can do one part by leading conversations about climate change and talk about our personal story. We want to do so by acting responsibly and respectfully, even when it is challenging. We will support others in their part and ask for help when we need it. and we will spread a little bit of hope every other day. Thanks again, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks goes to Coco for the creative support and the logo design. And also thanks to Vulcan Recorder for the music contribution. You can listen to the podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and all other podcast distribution apps on your phone. The next episode will be released in 1 week or 2 weeks. Thank you for listening and make sure to tune in next time. Bye bye.